Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only.
Oh, have I got your attention now?
Coffee's for closers only. I love it. Don, good morning. How are you
What's
today, brother?
up? I'm good, man. Good. I can't wait to get started. We have a really cool guest today. He's going to have lots of energy and lots of knowledge to bring here. I think he's just coming into our waiting room, and I'm excited to have him. His name is Zack Childress. There he is. Let's pop him on. So what's up, Zack?
What's up, Zack?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. What's going on, brother?
Man, I'm just hanging out, getting ready to hang out some more and do nothing.
I love it. Zack, I'm so glad you're here. You are one of my favorite people.
Oh, man.
All of real estate
I'll send you a
investing.
check for that later.
My friend, I'm telling you, I love this guy. Every time I've met him, he has been super, super nice, sincere, giving, has tons of value to give, and just an all-around awesome individual. So, Zack, I'm so glad you're here, man. Good to catch up with you.
Man, I'm glad to be here too, man. I mean, I sit back and watch from a distance all you guys and what you're doing. I'm wondering which, black hole Don's in today. So look, most people have a green screen room. He's got a black screen
That's
room.
right.
It matches my black t-shirts. No,
All
I'm just in
All I
I'm
see
here-
is the bobbling head, right? His shirt blends into the wall.
yeah. I'm in here screwing with the studio and the studio lighting and whatnot, and just kind of playing around with it today. So I've not given it the attention it deserves, but trust me, when it's done, it's going to be a pretty badass studio.
Man, look, I'm simple, man. This is my studio. It's my home office.
I like it. It looks good.
So, well, cool, man. So look, what are we going to talk about today?
Zack, fill us in real quick, if you don't mind, with kind of your story here. How you got started, and I know you've had some amazing successes and some bumps along the road as well. And I think it would be really valuable for the audience to just hear, a few minutes on, where you started and how you got to where you're at.
Well, that's cool, man. I think to your point, bumps along the road, that's really what makes you a success, right? I always say to anybody that's talking to me, I'm like, look, if you're going to hire a coach or a mentor, like, find one that's made mistakes. Right? Like,
Absolutely.
made mistakes, because that's where you really learn. But man, I started in real estate 20 years ago. So I'm circling 2 decades now in this game. And, it was like most people, I got into real estate because, well, I didn't know anything else. I was a high school dropout. I didn't go to college, or I ended up going back, but at the time I didn't. And, I just realized, like, there's got to be something. I just didn't know what it was. I knew that I was meant for greatness. I just didn't know how that greatness was going to get landed in my lap. And so I was always an opportunist. I always believed in, just having the understanding, like, I deserved more than where I was at. I didn't know how. I grew up single mom in a trailer park, so it wasn't like I had been around it or seen it or lived it or been in it. You know what I mean? I don't know. There was something that was just digging inside of me. Boss sent me to a Get Motivated seminar. I heard Tom Hopkins speak, and I was like, that's it. I'm going to this thing. And so the rest was history, right? I invested in myself and got going. My first year out, I did just shy of $1 million. And I was like, man, who needs school? It's like, I'm a 25-year-old kid about to make $1 million. I was like, school? Like, come on now.
So when you first started, what kind of real estate investing were you doing? Were you wholesaling?
Oh, I started as wholesaling because I didn't know any better. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, and you got to remember, 20 years ago, we didn't have all the stuff that the new generation has, right? I didn't have the softwares and the tools, and it was go down to the courthouse and pull records hard and go through them and write addresses down. And we did a lot of door knocking, and it was just a lot of bootstrap stuff back then. And I didn't know what I didn't know, and that's my big speak today, as now I know what I know, is I always say, look, wholesaling is not building wealth. Wholesaling is not investing, right? Wholesaling is a bridge, but most people get stuck on that bridge and then they don't do
Agreed.
anything else, right? And so
Agreed.
my life journey now is all about taking people that they come to you and they say, I want to wholesale. Well, I'm like, why? Well, I want to make money, but what's the goal? I want to have wealth. Okay, then why don't we focus on that instead of, and I know it goes against the grain with 90% of the YouTubers and Instagrammers and all the famous, wannabe gurus out there, but I could give a shit, right? Because ultimately it's sending them down a rabbit hole that will turn them into another employee. So my big thing is, look, let's spend the same amount of time you would spend building a wholesaling business, and let's focus on raising money, getting you where you need to be to go after deals so you can burr them. I'm with you, David. I'm a big burr guy, right? I house stack constantly. And if someone would have taught me that 20 years ago, I wouldn't have got stuck for 2 years of my life as a wholesaler, because I think back to that and I think about all the wealth I was creating for other people. Because I wasn't holding, because I just didn't know. I didn't know how to find non-traditional money to buy the house and then turn around and refinance out. And then people go, well, I don't have credit. Well, I didn't realize, I could just go find a partner and say, look, I'll find it. I'll find the front end. You go to the bank, get the back end, and we'll put it all in a partner deal, right? It's just changing the way people think. I just came out of my 3-day boot camp this weekend with people, and the whole concept was, look, real estate investing, first mentor, Rick Marionsky, taught me this. He said, Zach, what are you? I said, I'm an investor. He said, awesome. How much money do you move around to make money? I said, well, no, I wholesale. He said, well, then you're not an investor. He said, you're a wholesaler. He said, the definition of an investor is someone who moves money to make money. And he's like, until you start doing that, stop calling yourself an investor. And man, it hit me, because it just deflated me, right? Because here I thought I was an investor because I was chasing down contracts and trying to build a job of selling contracts. But there again, I didn't know any better, right? I didn't know any better. And in today's world, it's even harder for people, right? Because why? Because there's so much micro information. And everybody's got a $1 million idea and $1 million path. And it's not to say they're all wrong. All of them are right. Look, there's 101 ways to make $1 million in real estate. You just need to pick one. But you got to always keep remembering, what's the end goal? What's the end goal? What's the end goal? What's the end goal? Right?
I think people often lose sight of the end goal.
1,000%.
Or they don't have it in their crosshairs from the beginning. So everything you just said, I 100% agree with it, man.
Well, I nailed this weekend with my group. I said, look, the problem is this: if you're not focused on the end and not building the business to reach the end goal, then you're focused on just making $1. And when you're focused on just making $1, I got to do a deal to make some money. You're starting with the end instead of starting with all the we call them 4 pillars. So all you're trying to do is be a transactional expert. Make $1, spend money. Make $1, spend money. I'm like, you can have a job and do that. Right? Real estate is long-term. It's like, how do I build a business to pay me long-term? And that's where the real win is. But so many people, they've watched 1,000 YouTube videos and 100,000 TikTok reels that, they're stuck, right? They're stuck. They're frozen. They don't know what to do. And all they hear, all the noise is wholesaling, right? And I love the fact that you guys talk about wealth on here, because I think that's where people need to be. Anyways, I'll get off my high horse.
No, I love it, man. Zach, what did you do before you started in real estate? And it sounds like it was 20. You were about 25 when you got into the game.
Yep. I turned 45 Monday.
Happy birthday. That's awesome.
Happy birthday.
So what did you do prior, though?
Oh, man, what did I not do?
Okay.
I've shoveled shit out of septic tanks. I mean, I've done door-to-door sales. I've done bartending. I mean, I've swept roads. I sold watches and sunglasses on the beach.
You've done it all. It sounds
like. At the last part of my life, I was in the lumber supply sales. And so I worked for a company, and they would send me out into a territory to find builders to sell them materials to build houses. So that was the last part. And then after that was the last job I had 20 years ago, and just didn't have another one. I'm scared to death to even think about having a job. So
yeah, same, man. I love it. So you started at 25, you started with wholesaling. You mentioned that you did that for about 2 years. You thought
I started at wholesaling, and about year 2, I moved into creative financing stuff because I knew cash flow would help me sustain a business model of growth. Because, the onesie two, and don't get me wrong, I mean, we had a wholesaling machine. We were doing virtual wholesaling before the term was even called virtual wholesaling 20 years ago, right? It was, I knew the phone was the money machine. I knew it just because I grew up in sales, right? It was like, get on the phone, make calls, get on the phone, make calls. And so I was in California, the San Francisco Bay Area, which is a very tough market. So I was recruiting people to come to my house, and I was cleaning out bedrooms, and I was putting lawn chair furniture in the bedrooms. And back then we used VoIP systems called Tomato Vine. And I would set up all these little phone systems in the bedrooms, and I would give each person a state. I'd say, okay, you call Ohio, you call Texas, you call Mississippi, you call. And so we were literally doing virtual wholesaling. We just didn't even call it virtual wholesaling. I just called it territory development because that was my background. Like, hey, your territory is going to be Ohio. Your territory was going to be so-and-so. And we were using a lot of like list source back then. That was really the biggest thing that we could get access to. And so we were doing, I don't know, 17, 18 wholesale transactions a month back then. And I realized that I needed sustainable cash flow. So I started moving into lease options, and never really did a whole lot of subject twos. I've done them here and there depending on the deal, but I was always a fan of lease options. And so year 2, I branched into lease options, and then I built up the courage to go into rehabbing. And I lost $300,000 on my first rehab.
Wow.
I think you've told me this before, but man, we got to dive into that. 300K?
Oh, man,
a lot of capital.
Man. That was a gum.
Holy cow! But lessons, I want to learn the lessons. So, what did you do wrong that led to that big of a loss?
You could think of wrong because I didn't know. I mean, and here's the irony to this story, man. Oh my gosh, I had a guy that I'd met. And this house was in Oakland, California. I mean, it was a big deal. I mean, I say I lost $300,000 because one of the things I think people need to understand is the cost of lost opportunity too, right? And that's the reason it's so important to be in like masterminds that you guys do, or in coaching and things like that, because people look at that as an expense, but no, it's an investment. And it's I say it all the time, you're going to pay for your education one way or the other, either through mistakes or through lost opportunities, right? Well, mine was $100,000 of liquid cash out of my pocket. And then I also lost the $200,000 of the profits I was going to make on the deal. And I had a guy come to me and he said, look, this is a big rehab. He's like, you sure you don't need somebody to help you? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. You want to help? I'm like, do you do coaching? He's like, yeah, kind of. He's like, I'm more of a deal partner type coach, which my pea brain back then couldn't even fathom, the type of money this guy was asking for. Because I didn't understand. One of the things I didn't understand back then that I do now, and I pay yearly for this, is intellectual information. Right. And sometimes when you're first starting out in this business, if it's not tangible, if you can't hold it or see it, you don't think there's value in it. But the true value is in the intellectual information that the person has from the years of experience. And the guy said, look, you ain't got to pay me nothing. I'll coach you all the way through this deal. I just want half the profits at the end. And I could not fathom paying somebody $100,000 for coaching.
Just to give you some insights on what
I was
to do,
just
and
like,
probably more importantly, what not to do.
100%, like 1,000%. And so the story behind that, really, if you think about it, comes down to the fact that I could not get my pea brain around the idea that there's this thing called intellectual information, and it has value. And I just couldn't get my head around it, honestly. And so I said no. The contractor told me it was going to take $100,000. I got into the deal. He told me it was going to take 3 months. 3 months later, he calls me up and he's like, hey, you need to come look at the project. I'm like, oh, awesome. He's like, no, not awesome. He's like, I need another $100,000. I was like, what? And so I roll up on the project and it's gutted. And so that was a point in my career where I went home, crawled under the blankets, and thought I could sleep it away. Right? It was like, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I don't want to deal with this. I borrowed private money. I had a lot of people that were believing in me on this thing, and I don't know, man. It was a tough thing, but at the end of the day, I will say this, that it really made me understand, like, you can bounce back from anything as long as you believe, right?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
because what happens when you fall down and you go through something like that, doubt sets in like a mother. You know what I mean? Like, it starts to make you think, oh, maybe I wasn't meant for this. Maybe this, man, what am I doing? I'm an imposter. Like, what in the world? Like, I should have got a degree. Right? Like, I should have kept my job. Like, you start going through all this stuff, right? And I was married at the time, and the best advice I'll have to say was, she walked in the room one day and she said, "Look, you better get up and put your big boy pants on and either go get a damn job or figure this out, because you're not going to lay in the bed any longer." And I was like, you know what? She's right. Like, I got myself in this. I got to get myself out of this. And then that was when I came up. I called the private lender, and I told him what was going on. He was willing to do a deed in lieu of foreclosure, which I was very thankful for and blessed. And I picked up my wounds, man. I went right back into building back more of the wholesaling business. And it was in that moment that I realized, like, just because you can do one thing doesn't mean you can always do them all without the specialized knowledge. And that was when I hired a very specific coach that was dialed into development, construction, rehabbing, and Rick took me in and taught me about market segmentation and 5 economic indicators and how to buy the right rehabs in the right areas. And then I turned around and gave it another shot. It was a property in Sacramento, Natoma, Sacramento, and ended up making 42,000 on that one. And I was like, all right. And then I kept rocking and rolling, man. So anyways, that was that story.
Man, that's a great story. If you don't mind, really quickly, where did it go south on that deal? So you'd given that guy 100. Did he squander the money and not put it into the project,
I'm
or?
sure somewhere. I didn't know what I didn't know. Like, I was so busy in my own world of running a boiler room, which is what I
Mm,
was running in the wholesaling business, right?
mhm.
I was hanging out in the room with people on phones, helping them close deals. Um, and I just didn't look. I didn't know the process of whole rehabbing. I didn't know the steps that need to be done. I thought, oh, I'll hire a contractor. They manage the whole thing. I didn't, I wasn't managing the contractor. I wasn't managing I mean, I could go down the list. You know what I mean?
Yeah, lots of things then.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
with rehabbing, there's a lot of moving parts, and it takes a while to build the right team that you're on the sync with. And before you have that right team, you got to be in it with them. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, you got to be right there in it, making sure you guys are on the same page with everything. I mean, today, I got 14 rehabs going today, right now, right? So it's like, once you got the machine in place and you got the right team in place, you can start to allow it to be automated and systemized. But I was brand new. Geez, oh, look, what they can do that on TV. I can do that, right? Like,
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely.
So,
Before you have somebody that's going to be popping in and managing, you got to do that. And if you're not doing it, it's going to go sideways.
yeah, 1,000%. And that's
Yeah.
what happened, man. The poor management. Well, I didn't manage anything. I was just right. He would call me up and say, "Hey, can you go deposit 20 grand?" Sure, absolutely. And then I'd go back into pound my chest in the boiler room, right? Like, let's go, get on the phone, let's go. You know what I mean? And then 3 weeks later, he'd call me back. "Hey, I need another 15 grand. Hey, no problem. Let's go on the phone."
Right.
You know what I mean? Wasn't even something that I was paying attention to, and that's where I went terribly wrong. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't have the specialized knowledge. I should have took Joe's offer to coach me and for half the profits, and I didn't, because there again, I couldn't get my pea brain around it. I was just like, 100 grand? Well, you're crazy, man.
Mm-hmm.
You're crazy, right? But you asked me today, I spent 100 grand a year just on masterminds, coaching, and consulting. But that's why I grow, right? I mean, I don't just have systems and process in place. I mean, I own rentals and apartments and commercial. I do land development now. I mean, the process is just evolution over the years, right? But it only kept evolving because I kept hiring better coaches, kept hiring better consultants, kept growing the people around me. And as Don always says, I kept putting myself in the right rooms, right, to keep getting around people that were playing at a level bigger than me. So
Love it, man.
It's proximity, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's its proximity with that specialized knowledge, it's proximity with the intellectual information, it's proximity with emotional maturity. It's proximity is what we're ultimately paying for at the end of the day, to be in the right room with the right people to really help us achieve a common goal. And extremely important. I think that's where people fail. You're giving that guy half the profit was proximity to that knowledge and that information and that emotional maturity and decision making on those projects that you would have gained probably 10 or 20 fold from. And that's where people fail to really understand why it's important to be in the right room or to be around the right people or to have the right coach.
1000%, because he would have laughed at me when I would have went to him and said, here's the construction bid for this job and here's what we're doing. He had enough maturity and knowledge to look at that and go, there's no way what you want done is going to cost 90 grand. Like, there's no way. He would have said, go get some more bids.
And he would have, when the guy's calling you up for a payment, he would have, pointed out that the guy was trying to take advantage of you. I mean, it would have been obvious to somebody that's been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
When somebody's, people, there's been a comment to me recently that on a venture that I'm I've kind of not really flourished in as much as I wanted to, about people seeing me coming because I have the ability to write the check, right? And that's the same thing that happens with contractors. Sometimes the most honest people in the world, when they see somebody doesn't know any better, unfortunately, see somebody coming with the ability to write a check and no reason to ask questions. And so having the right people around you to be able to point that out and say, look, this person is crossing a line with you that they shouldn't be crossing is important as well.
1000%, man. 1000%. And we learn so much, right? I mean, well, we learn if we accept that we're learning. Sometimes people just see it as a failure and it's over. But, look, I wouldn't be sitting here 20 years later with, honestly, an amazing life. Really, I do love my life. I hang out at home all day. I don't want I've had the office with the 60 something employees and all this. I don't do it anymore. Right. I'm very intentional. I have a smooth operating business. I work with deal partners now. I don't want 100% of anything ever again. I want a little bit of everything is my theory on it. And so, this is why I do deal partners in my local markets, and I just split deals, and, I bring money when needed and they manage it and I oversee it. And then I just roll all that money into assets. Whether it's apartments, I'm about to go buy a piece of land on a lake that's got 9 cabins on it, and it's got room to bring in RV lots. And, it brings in about $380,000 a year. I'm going to take it down for about $700,000, but that's what I'm in. I just want lifestyle investing now. Right. But did it take me a lot of mistakes to get there? Yeah, absolutely. And a big chunk of that career, I fell in love with teaching people. I traveled the world, multiple countries, teaching people. And, I still teach. I'm the president of my local RIA, and I love it. I've been here as that president for going on 13 years. But I don't go out and speak 80, 90, 100 times a year anymore out into the market. Just, I don't know. I just don't want to. I love teaching, but I found that fulfillment here in my local market, and it's done really well for me. But I think what happens also is, back when I was traveling around teaching it, we didn't have as much, information is available to us as today. And so it was a little bit of a different thing. When someone found you, they were very happy to find you. In today's world, it seems like more people are jaded than they've ever been because of what's going on out there. Me and Don was just on another mastermind call where one of the guys on there built almost a $70 million a year business, and with seminars and teaching people. And he said something which at first I was getting a little annoyed about, because I've always said I'm a great closer. And he said, Zach was an okay closer. He was like, but there was other ones that were really good at it. But then he circled back and he said, but that's because Zach wasn't lying to people from stage.
Right.
You heard that, Don.
I heard that, which was an important distinction as to why they were closing better, because they were saying whatever they needed to say.
They were saying, whatever, we'll do everything for you. Well, the problem with that statement, not that his statement, but the problem with that outcome is that's why we have so many jaded people now, because so many people will just say anything to get you to do the one action they want you to do. And I was always the guy that got in front of the room. And I was like, look, I'm not going to tell you you're going to become a millionaire, because most of you in this room won't. I was like, I'm just going to truth. I'm like, but here's the reality. I can show every one of you in this room how to make $100,000, $200,000 your first year if you'll follow some simple processes. Now, what you do with that will be on you. And can you build it into $1 million portfolio? 100%. But I was just always very honest, very truthful, and very to the point with them. And, maybe to the guy's point, that's why, I wasn't the best speaker in that world, because I wasn't willing to lie to people. I wasn't willing to tell them untruthful facts. So,
you said something that kind of pointed that I want to talk about just for a second here. And you said that in the beginning you were using like List Source to get leads, and then you guys from there were just hitting the phones. And I love how simple it was when you were doing that. And nowadays there's like 100 different places to go out and do marketing and get leads, and 100 different systems and CRMs that you can have. And I feel like a lot of people nowadays, they have such high levels of analysis paralysis because there are so many options and so many things that they could do. They need to have this software plus that software. And what about this one? Is it better than that one? And it's just like,
here's the problem with that, David. Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about that for a minute, man. Let's talk about that for a minute, because here's the problem. It puts people into the world, TikTok University, YouTube University, Instagram University, and everybody's flash. So they go to their business and they're like, I need all this software. I need all this technology. Listen, and not to go down this rabbit hole, but the people that I work with, I tell them, like, stop, cut it all out. Here's what I need you to do. Here's a script. Here's a phone. Here's phone numbers. Call. Just start calling. I simplify it so much. And they're like, but what about, I'm like, look, we'll get to all that. But first, you got to actually start making the business make money, right? Let's get the business to make money so the business can then be self-liquidated, so that the business then can set a budget for systems, tools, and processes. And the reality is if you just want to do 2, 3, 4 deals a year, you don't need all that junk. You don't need it. Now, if you want to be like, the people you see out on Rockstar YouTubes and want to do 10, 20 deals a month, okay, we need a bunch of stuff to do that, right? We need dialers. We need all these things in place. But for most people, you understand, like for most people that even start looking at real estate, they don't have any desire to scale their business. I talk to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people face to face every single month at RIAs. And I'm going to tell you right now, the majority of them have no desire to build these big, scalable investing companies. Do you know what 80% of them, all they want to do?
1 or 2 deals a year, probably.
They just want to add to their retirement account. That's it. That's all they want to do. They and that's why they get so confused with the information. They're like, I just want to start buying 1 or 2 or 3 houses a year. Like, that's it. Now you get the young hustlers that come in and, they see the big numbers and they look at somebody else's chapter 50 and that's what they focus on. Right. But man, all that stuff is cool, but it is nothing but a freaking distraction for most people to get to the deals they need. Anyways, that's
no, it absolutely is. It's a massive distraction. And analysis paralysis is the worst enemy of any entrepreneur, any investor, anybody that is trying to build a business. The less is more. It always is.
Well, it's It's also working without working on things that don't serve the true purpose, like, the name of your LLC or a business card design or a website, what I'm saying, before you've even done a deal.
Right.
It's being busy producing something that's not going to produce income, right away. That's what a lot of people get caught up in. And I always wonder, like, is that because they're scared to make money? Is that because they're scared?
They're afraid to take the action, because the action subconsciously creates fear. So they find a comfort, which is build this process, add this sheet, do this, learn.
Yeah, I need to do this site, and then I'll feel like I have the tools.
Yeah, but then they don't do it, because then they go, oh, but now I need to go do this now. Oh, now I need to go
the
do
business
this
card or the logo. And I don't think that they're going to want to do business with me if I don't have a cool website. They're not even going to know that you have a website.
That's right, man. That's right. And it's not even their intention. Let's be real clear. Intention and subconscious intention, right? Intentionally, they want to build wealth. Intentionally, they want to create cash flow. Intentionally, they want to leave a legacy. So intentionally, they want to start the journey. But the subconscious is a very, very strong enemy into our lives of creating something new. It is a strong enemy. And so they don't even realize they're doing it when they're solopreneurs, because when they're solopreneurs, they're all alone. They don't have a coach holding them accountable, calling them out, saying, why are you stuck doing this, right? They don't even realize it. All they know is they're avoiding the pain, because to them, the pleasure is putting these systems in place, because instant gratification is created because they can see what they're doing. They can see it being produced. So the instant gratification is stimulating their brain. And so subconsciously, it's pushing them from the fear. And the fear is they got to go out and make calls and send offers and close a deal. Well, to them, that's the scariest shit they'll ever do, right? So they don't even realize it until someone steps into their world, pulls the curtain back and says, this is your subconscious talking to you. Stop. Like, face it, face on. This is like the bully that's coming and pushing you down in the hallway. Get up and stand up to it. And that's a problem with a lot of people. And the reason we have 60-something% fail rate in our industry is because they don't realize that this is the bully in their life that's controlling them.
And you got to face it right away. You don't need the website and the logo and the LLC and all these things you may need at one point way later.
Right.
But right away, all you need is a phone.
Bam.
And that's it.
Bam.
Period.
Look, I was talking to a friend that we all know, Mr. Tom Crow, and he sends me a text, and he's like, man, what systems are you using in your business right now? I was like, oh man, are you ready? It's long. And he's all like, yeah, give it to me. If you guys know Tom, he gets excited about this stuff, right? I'm like, are you ready? He's like, I'm ready. I'm like, all right, a phone, Google Docs, Skype. I was like, that's my system. He's like, right? No, I mean, like, what about all your CRM? And I'm like, here, let me give it to you again.
Let me give it to you.
Google Docs.
Give it to you again. Make sure you take notes this time.
Like, you put dots between the letters. Like, that's it, man. He's like, what? I'm like, dude, it doesn't have to be that complicated, honestly. It really doesn't. Now, if I was rebuilding back what I once had, which was a call center, a boiler room, obviously I would need more systems and tools, right? But I'm living proof that you can build a multi-million-dollar portfolio and have an active flipping business and wholesale a few deals, and you don't need all that stuff. Like, you don't. I'm living proof of it. It's just I don't take 100% of any of my rehabs. I use deal partners. So therefore, I'm not having to run around and run all these systems. And I talk, now this is going to throw a lot of people off. I'm not a believer in paid marketing. I'm not. I'm just not. I'm a believer in a lead network. And that's where most people, I think, go wrong, is because we all want instant gratification. So paid leads give us instant gratification. But the problem with paid leads is it always has an end. The list gets saturated, the market gets saturated. So you're always trying to cultivate new lead sources to constantly be buying new leads. Is it converting right? What's my KPI? What's all this crazy nonsense that makes no sense to me anymore? Versus a lead network. So a lead network, people don't tend to build because it's not instant gratification. It's long-term development. It's like a big SEO machine in your local markets. But what it requires people to do is it requires them to get out from behind their desk and actually go to networking events, go to banks, go to management companies, go to contractors, go to inspectors, build this lead network of people that all know you. And over time, what happens is that lead network becomes this compounding effect. And now people are just sending you stuff. Like today in my world, I might spend $1,000 a month, but I got more deals that hit me on a weekly basis than I can even get to half the time, right? And the difference in that mindset is, are you in it for the long term or are you in it for the instant gratifications? Now, let me be very clear. Again, I'm typically working with and consulting and coaching for people who are building wealth, right? And if someone comes to me and they say, hey, look, I want to build a machine out of this, I want to hire 50, 60 people, I'd be like, man, you need to go talk to Don.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
like that just stresses the shit out of me, man. Like I don't even want to teach you how to do that, right? Like we can go another route with this and help you build wealth. I'm all for it. Let's go. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But that's not my world. So that's not the world I want to, play in or even teach in. And so if they're in that other world and they're trying to build teams and acquisition and disposition and all those fancy words, then they're going to need paid lead because they got to feed the machine, right? They got to feed the machine. Where if you're just like, you got one acquisition guy, you're trying to buy 1 or 2 or 3 deals a month, I'm telling you, I could line up down the street the people that I get into this business and get them started, and never do they ever pay for leads. The only thing they might pay for would be skip tracing, right? Because we pull lists, we skip trace them, and then we call them, right?
And everybody already has a phone.
Yeah.
They're already paying that bill. That's the biggest tool we have.
Yep.
I agree 100%. Skip tracing is, sometimes going to be needed to be able to reach.
Oh, it is needed. And let's not say sometimes. Like I'll tell you, in my world, and even with the people I work, we use skip tracing all the time.
Sure.
Like it is like, even if we just drive by a house and we see it, we're skip tracing it, right? Mm-hmm. If we're pulling, let's say, like a list of 65 and older with some code violations, we're skip tracing them. You know what I mean? To get their phone numbers. Like we play in a world of pre-fault before they get into the 30, 60, 90 days. We want to catch them when they're like, water shut off, little things like we're looking for those lists, and then we're skip tracing them. So we're always on the phone. So that's what I'm saying. Like we run a small budget, and it's typically because of the skip tracing fee. You follow me? Because
Sure.
That is a fee that we do pay for often, but it's to get the phone number so we can call them. Because I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, you can have all the leads in the world. If you don't know how to take a prospect through what we call a lead intake process, which is communicate, research, analyze, then negotiate. If you can't do that, I don't care what the quality of the lead is. Right? You ain't ever going to get good at converting free leads or paid leads, right? So
I say it all the time that every marketing channel works if you put the right time, money, energy into it. Usually what's broken in an operation is everything that happens after the phone rings. And that's usually where the marketing fails. And people don't seem to grasp that. They think more leads is going to solve the problem. A broken clock's right twice a day. You're going to close laydowns. You're going to look successful, but do you really want to clean up? If you're spending that money, you got to fix what happens after the phone rings.
1,000%, Don. And I say it all the time because we do take inbounds, but it's very rare unless it's through the lead network, but most of it's outbound. And I'm like, all the work is right there on that first call. Like, don't be aggressive. It's not an interrogation. Like, stop trying to interrogate somebody that you just called out of the blue.
Right? I love that.
It's not like you're just trying to say, hey, look, I know you might be going to the grocery store right now. You might be changing a diaper, but hey, if you'd like to sell your house, I'd love to schedule a call with you tomorrow or the next day. Right?
That's it.
Then let's get into it. You know what I mean? Yep. We're just trying to start some warm touches here. But I get people all the time that, they'll say, well, I'm like, well, what are you asking? Well, how old the roof is? I'm like, you just called this person out of the blue and they think you're interrogating them. They have no idea this information they even needed to have a conversation with you today on it. So anyways, there's all kinds of little things that we talk about, but it is about communication, right? I think that's the goal of helping people get better at, is how they communicate, how they actually build rapport with a prospect and move that prospect into what we refer to as a bracketing method, to get them to raise the hand to even want you to send the offer. Because once that happens, now you're in. because now they've engaged you, they've talked to you, and they're actually entertaining the idea of you sending them an offer with inside of a bracket that you might have put out there. Versus most people, what we see is if they don't have the training, they just send the offer and then stick their head in a hole and go, I hope they accept
I
it.
hope they sign it. Right.
I
So I
hope they sign it.
Zach, I love it because, people want to do business with those they know, like, and trust. And I think people often underestimate the likeness factor in
Right,
that little equation, right? So what I just heard from you over the last maybe, 2 minutes was you get people to like you before you start, and I'm going to use the wrong verbiage here, but interrogate them about the house.
Right.
Because if you jump to that first,
Yep.
they're going to be like, why is this guy asking me all these questions? How does he know if I even want to sell the property?
Yeah. I don't know
so
this guy. Who is
that's
this
one of the
guy?
things that I teach my students right out the gate is people want to do business with those that they like and that are friendly with them. And, building rapport is the number one way to get somebody to want to work with you or to allow you to come meet them at a property.
Right.
Or to even present them with an offer. If they don't like you, you struck out already. So that's always the first thing. And you said it perfectly. So I just wanted to reiterate that. That's amazing.
Think about it from all of that is, such a crucial point to anybody that's talking to somebody. But also what you have to remember too, is that the seller or the other investor or the wholesalers, they have to understand that you're there to try to help too, right? Like I have so many wholesalers that bring me deals before they bring anybody else because they're like, look, you're not going to laugh at me or tell me my ARV is wrong. You're going to look at it and kind of explain to me what I did wrong and give me some pointers to go out and get it better. And I'm like, yeah, because I want the deal. Like go get a better deal and I'll buy it from you, right? I take the same strategy over into homeowners. Like most homeowners have no clue why your offer is where it is. They have no clue. They don't know why would you buy my house at 90,000? I want 140. Like they don't understand. Most homeowners don't even understand how a closing works, much less what we call a net equity worksheet, which then allows us to explain like, look, I know you want 140, but you're not going to walk with 140. And here's why. Like,
even if you did this or that. Absolutely.
Right. Like, let's explain this so that you understand. So really, we're not that far off. If I paid you 90 and you might walk with 110. So let's figure out this difference because I don't want to lose the deal over a few $1,000s, right? I want to work this out with you if we can find a happy medium here. So, and I think when you come at it from that approach, I know we use the word negotiating, but negotiating is not really the right word. I like more of an explanation close, right? I'm going to explain to you the process, right?
100%.
Let's
every time that I've won a deal and my offer wasn't the highest, and I know both of you have done that several times too. Every single time that somebody said, I want to work with you, even though this guy over here has offered me more, it's because I explained how I came up with that number, right? We call it seller's net sheet. You have a different term.
We call it the same thing, net equity sheet.
Net equity sheet, same thing. But you're breaking down all of it and you're showing the equation that you're using and you're starting and you're backing it out. And I essentially, when I sit down at the table, I say, hey, listen, this is my offer, but every one of my, friends, I don't even call them competitors. Every single one of my friends that, you may or may not speak to, they're using the same equation, right? Yep. And you can build trust immediately with somebody if you open up and you explain what you're doing.
1,000%, man.
And I get people that ask me from time to time, like, Dave, you're pretty good at sales. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I am awful at sales, but I'm really good at listening. And I'm really good at getting the people to know, like, and trust. And that's where you start. And if you don't start there, you're not going to have a whole lot of success.
I'm with you, man. We're on the same page, David. And I think that is the message that, if I always say, if somebody says, well, I want to do more deals, well, then I say, well, look, then get better at talking to people because you've got deals right on your desk that you're not converting because you talked to them wrong. Mm-hmm. So instead of, like Don's point, instead of buying more leads, get better at talking to people, right? Get better at solving problems. We're in real estate. We solve problems. I say it 1,000 times in my RIA. Stop looking for deals and start looking for problems.
Love that. I love that.
Right?
So one of the things that I truly believe, and I want your guys' opinion on this, but as a real estate investor, all we really do is trade convenience for discounted properties.
100%.
That's it. Like that's
And
the highest
solutions,
level
right?
overview.
We're creating a convenience for them by providing a solution to whatever the bigger problem is that they have, for them to trade us almost. I mean, this goes back as far as I'll give you 2 chickens, you give me a horse. Right? I mean, that's how far back it goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a homeowner saying, I got this problem that I need this for, and I'll give you my house at this price so that I can go solve that problem, right? It's the same thing. It's nothing different. That's like I put on events, people come in all the time. They're like, oh, we can't find any leads. And then my students in the room would be like, man, I got more leads than I know what to do with.
Right.
I'm like, it's the problem isn't that you don't have any leads. I'm like, the problem is that you're not looking in the right areas, because everybody's surface level with marketing and you're not communicating correctly.
Yeah.
Right?
Or maybe you are looking in the right areas, but you're approaching it like I need to say the right thing to convince that guy or girl that they're motivated.
Good point. Good
and
point.
You can't convince somebody to be motivated.
Right.
You can offer convenience.
Yep.
I don't even ask for discounts. I demand them. You want me to be the buyer? Well, here's where I need to kind of be, but I'm going to do everything I can to make your life easy and convenient. And I'm going to go above and beyond, and I'm going to show you how and why the number that I'm making is a fair number for both of us. Oh, and by the way, all of my friends that may come in behind me, they're using this same formula. So if they don't explain it to you, are you going to know, and trust these individuals, mostly trust them as much as you do me now, because of the fact that I'm opening up, the equation in the books and all that stuff to them. So 100%.
Well, man, real estate's not that complicated at the end of the day.
It's really not.
Real estate is, if you really think about it, it's a repetitive process. We run numbers, we look for certain things, we learn how to evaluate a market, we say the same things, we answer objections the same way. Like, it's a big repetitive process, right? What we have to get good at, especially with new people coming into the game, is getting good at being confident to go and talk to those people. And to your point is they think they have to be this sly, slick salesperson, right? And that is what stops most of them. And that's really not it. And the other side of it is the seller feels it when you're trying to find a deal. When you're looking to figure out what the problem is that you can solve, they feel that too. And, not to get all feng shui on you guys here today, but energy is a real thing. And people can feel it, man. They can feel intention. They can feel intention, right? And if you're like, well, this is what I can pay you for it, if you don't sell it to me, you're probably going to lose the house. Versus, let's look at some of your options, because I would hate for you to lose the house because you're not educated on your options, right? That's a different way to approach that, right?
Yes. You said similar things, but you framed them differently.
1,000%.
Yeah, but man, and I think a lot of people, they struggle with that. And I love that you pointed out that the biggest fear for most people is, just getting on the phone and talking to other individuals. And yet they'll go spend all this time and money building out these systems or signing up for, softwares and CRMs and marketing platforms just because they want to avoid the inevitable. And I think you referred to it as the bully, right? You got to face that. Yeah. Talking to people is where this business starts. And it's really where it ends at the end of the day, too. That's where it all comes together. So you got to get comfortable with that.
Well, and I had somebody at my event spoke up, and they said, well, it's not that way in commercial. And I'm like, no, it is the same way. The reason you're saying that is, and I asked the lady, I said, well, how many commercial buildings have you bought? She said, well, I own 7 of them. I said, how many of them have you bought direct to seller? She goes, oh, I use brokers. I said, then that's why you made that statement, because you're working through a broker. I said, every building I've ever bought, I've never bought through a broker. It's always been directly to a seller. And so this communication is vital when you want the best deals, which are direct to sellers. Yeah, if you're going to play with, whenever my agent sends me a deal or whenever my broker sends me a deal, I'll buy something, then no, you ain't got to worry about communication skills. You ain't got to, but you're not going to get the best deal. Let's just call it what it is. You're not going to get the best deal. And so some people will try to tell you, oh, well, the commercial world's different. And look, don't get me wrong. The commercial world is a completely different beast. It is very nichey. It's very, it's just different. But the game is the same.
The game's the same.
The game's the same. It's you got to dig them up. You know what I mean? Because if the brokers got it, they done told all their other buyers. It may not hit LoopNet like most people thinks they do, but they've got 30 commercial buyers that they pick up the phone. They call all the buyers and say, hey, I got this new land deal. I got this new entitlement project. I got this new strip center, right? It's the same game. So you just got to dig them up. You got to dig them up.
So I learned an important lesson here today. You put Dave and Zach on a call, and I don't have to do any of the work. So we're coming up on an hour. This has been a wonderful conversation. We got a few questions in the chat, David. You want to pop a few
You
of those
talk
up?
so much, though, Don. I mean, we gotta keep you quiet.
Let's throw a couple. I like
Yeah.
that idea, Don. Let's use this last 10 minutes. I want to respect Zach's time.
Right.
Let's see here. So Matt says that's amazing. He also says happy birthday.
Thanks, brother.
Jason Rodriguez.
Jason Rodriguez.
Yes. All right. Let's see here. The Insulation Station says, what's up, guys? Let's see here. Let's see. We got a couple more here. What happened to the lender who got the deed in lieu? Did he flip it?
Oh, yeah. He got rich. He made a killer deal on that one. So
okay, so we got a question here. Good morning. I'm trying to make an offer on a home that's going through probate. The agent is requesting a release of deposit once an offer is accepted. Can you explain that to me and break down how I don't know if there's any more to that down in the way here or not. I don't see it. But I don't like making offers through agents if I don't have to. And there's one very, very specific reason. And I'm not going to bore you guys. I'm going to try to keep this super quick. But let's assume that Zach's a seller. Don's a real estate investor that is trying to get directly to Zach. But Zach has an agent. Or let's say I'm the agent in this scenario. And I approach Zach and I say, hey, I'm an agent. You should work with me. Let's get your property listed. And I'm pretty confident that I can get you like between 50 and 70 cents on the dollar. I'm the agent, right? This is what I do. Like, who doesn't want 50 to 70 cents on the dollar? Are you ready to sign my listing agreement paperwork?
yeah, no.
No, absolutely not. No agent ever approaches a seller with that pitch because that's a terrible pitch. Awful. Instead, the pitch is, well, we're going to look at the market and we're going to see what some of these other properties have sold, the comps, and we're going to try to get you every penny, 100 cents on the dollar, maybe even more than some of these other properties if your subject property has a little bit more to offer. So the agent, when they come in, they are putting in this message, this idea that you should not accept a discounted offer. So I try to avoid buying properties listed on the MLS for that one reason right there. They're not necessarily going to be very interested in offering a discount because they've already been told that they shouldn't. But what's your guys' 2 cents on that?
I don't disagree. Let me jump in because the question is about releasing the deposit. I want to make sure we hit that before we jump into any further on the conversation. When you're releasing the deposit, you're saying that you're removing all contingencies and your deposit goes bye-bye.
Bingo.
And so you don't want to do that if it's subject to any kind of inspections. And depending on where it's at in the probate process, if it's in probate in court and hasn't been approved yet, then you have released that deposit to somebody that may or may not be entitled to that deposit because the court hasn't approved that person to be the executor of that particular property. So if it's already been approved and the person has been designated executor and controlling the interests of the property, then again, it goes back to, are you making your offer with zero contingencies and are you okay with that? And if you're not, then I wouldn't release the deposit. If it's still in the probate process, you definitely don't want to release the deposit because it could be going into a situation where their probate's not approved or the person that gets released to isn't approved to be the executor. I don't know if anybody wants to hit that or not, but that was more specific to the question.
No, I was going to go down that rabbit hole too, Don.
Yeah.
Was saying like I would not release if because here's why: probate and inherited are two different things, right? If you're making an offer on a probate, that means there's no executors yet. It hasn't been issued to an heir yet. So why would you release anything when you haven't even gotten to the final person that can say, yes, we accept your offer, right? You're in limbo land right now. So why that agent would even ask you to release it, unless there's more to the story here that we don't know. You could be going after a probate. It could have already landed on the executor, and now they're saying they've accepted your offer, release your escrow or contingencies at this point. So I'm sure there's probably more to the story, but the point is if it's in probate, I don't even know why they would even ask you to release it. I mean, that doesn't even make sense. So,
and the reality is in probate, look, there's a certain reality about probate and signing a contract with somebody who is going through the probate process. That contract technically doesn't have a legal standing until after the probate's been approved. Right. So you don't want to be releasing money or deposits unless it's part of your risk. Like, we will pay for the probate process as part of our cost of doing business. We understand that the person may not be approved. We may lose that money, but we understand that. So, and we weigh that risk with the particular property. The other thing to understand too is you never, ever, ever want to release a deposit or remove contingencies unless you're truly okay closing on that property or losing that money. And that's very specific.
Yeah,
right.
Be clear on that.
Right. Okay.
Love it. You guys nailed it. All right. Here's an interesting one here. Johnny Santiago says, question: I need a down payment of $120K, first time newbie. Any advice, guidance?
Well,
so
why are you buying a $600,000 house as a newbie?
Right. Well, it could be the market that this individual's in. There could be a lot of things, but I think that there's an infinite number of answers to this. I mean, you could ask the seller to carry that $120K. You could
private money.
See if the individual is willing to sell you the property subject to. Don mentioned private money. You could go hard money.
Bridge,
you could partner with another investor that may have it if it is in fact truly a good deal. You could pull equity out of your own home or properties or business. I mean, there's a million ways to go about it.
Here's what makes me nervous, though, David. It says first time newbie.
Sure.
600. This takes me back to the story I just shared. The $300,000 I lost was on a $580,000 house. So, and I was a first time newbie into flipping. So I'm just curious. I love the question, but there needs to be more context.
There needs to be more info there for sure.
So,
and it could be a Bay Area property where an entry level property is. Well, and Zach, you're talking about being in I'm assuming you were in the Bay when you had that situation.
I did, yeah.
So, but still, that's a lot of money to put on a line as a first time newbie. Look, if you're asking this question, it means you don't have the right mentor or the right partners in place. And that means you need to reach out to one of us on this call here. I'm in California, if that's where you're at, if it's another market, and let's have a conversation or find a mentor or a partner that's going to be able to really make sure that you're secure in that process. To try to go out on a property where you're putting 120 grand in or asking somebody to put 120 grand in on that project and not have the proper advice or mentorship through that process is just asking to have a very expensive lesson.
Love it, man. Love it. Matt says people are nervous to make the offer because they don't believe it works. And that's when we were talking about, the bully and doing all these other things and having analysis paralysis. He also asked, how do they not pay for leads? And there's a ton of ways to not pay for leads. And Zach mentioned a bunch of them already, but most of it comes down to networking. So the first 3 deals I did came from me calling property management companies. And these were companies that I wasn't working with already. They weren't managing properties for me. I just called them and said, hey, I'm an investor. I'm looking for some deals. Do you have any clients right now that have a rental that you're managing, but the tenants screwed the house up really bad and they don't have the money to fix it, so it's just sitting vacant? 3 deals.
Hey, and add this to the end of that.
From that.
To what you just said, tell everybody to add this to the end of it. If they want to sell it, I'll buy it, fix it up so you can get high rents, and I'll leave it with you.
And I'll leave it with you. Yeah, absolutely.
That's management's concern, is you're going to take it away from them. So you got to make sure, hey, I'm going to clean it up, make it nice so you can get high rents, and I'll leave it with you.
And it's very similar when you are, I don't really love on-market deals, and I don't teach people to go look there. But if you were really busy and you're okay leaving money in a deal or putting money down, then that's not a bad solution per se, but very similar if you're trying to make an offer on a property that's listed and has an agent, see if that agent will represent you as well. And then you're going to be able to get an even better deal. You're not paying the agent anyway. The seller typically is. So what do you care if they're representing you and the seller? Love that. But like, network with attorneys that do evictions or estate planning, network with property managers, network with your own accountant or your own, people that and do business with, right? I'm sure you probably know 30 people who are real estate agents. Well, oftentimes they will go run an appointment and the owner of the home says, hey, I would love for you to help me sell this, but I don't really want my photos online. I'm embarrassed of the condition of the property. Well, that's what we like to refer to as a pocket listing. And we get calls weekly from agents saying, hey, I got this guy, the house is destroyed. He doesn't want his neighbors to see he's selling it or his friends or family to like see the photos online. And those are ways to get leads that are essentially going to be leads that you're not paying for. You may still have to pay somebody or, for the referral on the back end, but you're not floating a bunch of cash up front to get those leads to come in. Love that.
Hey, I'm going to give you one too, man. Well,
Let's
I
hear it.
I got a whole bunch of them, but one of the first things that I always tell people I'm working with, I'm like, do you just need one? You want to start with just one deal? And they're like, yeah, I want to get one deal. I'm like, all right, here's how you get a deal by tomorrow. It's this amazing thing. You see this thing in your hand?
Yep.
You probably have 3, 4, 5, 6, 800 contacts in here. Send a text to every single one of them and say, hey, I buy cash for houses. If you know anybody or yourself or your neighbor needs to sell, shoot me a text back. I'd love to talk to them. Send it to everybody in your contacts.
I gotta pop this up real quick here. It says, have you guys seen the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the Ark of the Covenant melts the Nazis' faces? This episode is like that, except the Ark is it's the Ark of Zack melting my brain.
I love it. Damon Crawford. He nailed it.
Oh,
nailed
it. Funny, man.
I love it. All right. Let's see. We got time for one or two more, guys. I know what you mean. I do well in person, but not on the phone. Matt, you got to refine those skills, buddy. The best way to do it is just to do more of it. And, don't go in with the mindset or the attitude that you need to convince them to be motivated. Right? Just make a friend with them. Tell them you can help them. And, I spent the first 2 or 3 years of my full-time career trying to convince people that they should work with me, trying to convince people that they were motivated and that, they would be a fool to not take my offer. And then, I just kind of had this epiphany that, man, that is a really negative way to look at things, and it's deflating. And at the end of the day or at the end of the week, if I didn't get a deal, that I was just terrible at this job. But then I just kind of realized that, I can't convince people to be motivated. They have to choose that. But what you can do is you can be friendly with them, and you can let them know that if and when they do need to sell, that we can be here to help them. And we're more than happy to come to the property and meet them there and show them the comps and explain the equation that we're using. So when we make an offer, it should be low, ideally, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to feel unfair. Low can still be fair. And if you're good at explaining that, then that's a great way to go about that. What do you guys think?
I agree.
The statement just says to me a couple of things. Number one, self-limiting beliefs, because you're saying you're not instead of saying I want to be, or I can be. The other thing that it points out to me is if you're good in person, bullet point what you're doing in person, because you're probably just kind of doing it naturally, subconsciously, and you don't even realize it, but record yourself doing it, come back home, play that over and over, and then mimic on the phone what you're doing in person, and you'll find a better solution.
That's excellent advice. I love it. All right. One
Zach,
more, guys, and then we're going to wrap up. Go ahead, Don.
Say, Zach, I'm going to get you a shirt made that says, I melt brains. Ask me how. I just want you to know that's coming.
It says what? I'm not nuts. I'm brains. What?
I melt brains. Ask me how.
I'm not brains. Ask me how.
I melt brains. Yep. I melt them.
All right. Dig says.
Ask me how.
I got it now.
Dig says, I heard
it takes me a minute to catch on.
Expired listings are best to target as potential leads. Here's the thing. Any opportunity for you to provide convenience to somebody else in exchange for a discount makes for a good lead, if not the best lead. So are there going to be people that have a property that's listed that expired after the 4 or 6 or 9 month listing term that are going to be motivated? Absolutely. But are you going to have people that don't need to sell the property in the first place that have their property listed that expires? Yes, you're also going to have that. So I'm not saying that's a bad place to look by any means, but don't forget my pitch a minute ago to Zach on the fact that as an agent, I'm typically going to be convincing somebody to let me be the listing agent because I'm going to get them full retail for it.
Well, and
Just my
also
2
say
cents.
this too, we love expired listings for one lead flow, and that is for creative financing. Because most people, when it expires, it was because it was priced too high. And you'll find that the reason they're pricing it too high is because they don't have enough money to come out of their own pocket for closing fees and real estate commissions. So they price the house higher to cover all of that, and then it expires. So you can swoop in and target them with a specific message that says, hey, is your payment too much for you? Are you afraid to go into foreclosure? Give us a call today. We can show you a bunch of options to help you out. It leads them down the path of understanding terms with you, which solves their problem because you already know the problem that you're trying to target, and you can provide a solution by helping them by taking over payments and structuring of terms.
That was a phenomenal answer. Wow.
100%.
I love it. I love it.
I think we're good, right?
Yep.
So, okay. I just want to thank everybody for watching the Dave and Zach show. I'm your moderator, Don. Here. And if you got value from this episode, make sure you're liking and sharing and getting the word out. Coffee with Closers is also a podcast out there on iTunes, everywhere else you listen. And we're here every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific and 12 noon Eastern, 11 CST, right? So, Dave, got anything you want to add to that?
No, just Zach, thank you so much for your time. Super grateful to have you on the show. Always love connecting with you. You're a wealth of knowledge. And you dropped some bombs on our audience today with just tons and tons of value.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you so much for coming, man.
Man, I'm glad to be here hanging out with you rock stars, man. One day I'll be like you when I grow up.
Bro, I'm still trying to be like you, man. That's my ultimate goal.
I love it. All right,
Nice.
guys.
I love it. Love
We're
it. Thanks for
wrapping
having
it
me,
up.
man.
Thanks for joining.
Right.
Come back every week, same